Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning from wherever you're joining us from today. My name is Sarah and I'm the Program and Event Manager at the Reactor in Sydney, Australia. Welcome to another Microsoft Reactor live stream event. So today we have an exciting lineup of speakers that will include Microsoft's newest cloud advocate, Renee Noble, and some awesome coding students. Today they will be discussing and demonstrating what it's like to code in school. So just firstly, a bit of background on your speakers. A lot of people have already met Renee online, but I'll just give you another little brief intro. So Renee is a self-proclaimed Jane of all trades. She's worked in government doing ML and Python backend, full stack in the ed tech startup sector, and dabbles with embedded tech. So in her spare time, she also leads the Girls Programming Network for women and girls to realize their potential as techies. She's also started her own business to help bring exciting coding opportunities to kids and teachers. We also have our students today who we'll see on the screen shortly. So we've got Sam. So Sam is a 17-year-old currently in year 12 at Bradfield Senior College. He started learning coding Python at around 8 years old and has been hooked ever since, taking a strong interest in computers and how they work and learning more languages for school or fun. He has presented at the Students Showcase for PyCon Oz twice and loves to fiddle around with strange projects in his free time. And last but not least, we have Izzy. So Izzy is 16 and going into year 11 this year at Concord High School and has been programming since she was 7 years old, starting with Python. She aims to do software engineering at University of Sydney after finishing the HSC. She has some experience with JavaScript and web development, but finds JS a bit challenging. So today you guys will see that we're going to be speaking for about an hour with 10 to 15 minutes for questions at the end. However, do send us your questions throughout and definitely engage with us in the question section there. We will also be sharing a link to a couple of the resources Renee has kindly provided, and also a link to our survey. So if you guys have time to fill that out at the end, that would be awesome. But and also there will be a recording available on our YouTube channel straight after today. So if there's anything you'd like to reference back after today's session, you can do so on our YouTube channel, which we'll also provide you the link with. But without further ado, I'd like to hand the floor over to Renee to begin. So thank you, Renee, and over to you, Sam and Izzy.
Thanks so much for the intro, Sarah. I'm very excited to be here today with two of my favorite teens, and I don't say that lightly. There's a lot of cool teens out there, but legit two of my favorite ones, to talk about how they got into tech. They've made some really cool things that I've had the pleasure of hearing about. The way I came to know Izzy and Sam, Izzy actually joined us at the Girls Programming Network quite a while ago. You were still in primary school, right, Izzy?
Yeah, I think it's been maybe 5 years. So that means sounds, like year 6.
Yeah, so I think maybe your mom even possibly snuck you in, maybe even a little younger, where maybe you know, we didn't advertise for that age range. But yeah, we were delighted to have you because you're such a fabulous coder. And then I got to know Izzy. I got to know Izzy and Sam's amazing tech teacher mom. Also used to work at Microsoft, Amanda, who hopefully we can get on the show one day as well, and got to know Sam as well. I get to have the pleasure of going bouldering with these two and their awesome family sometime. So I'm really excited to have them both here today to show off some of the really cool stuff they've made. I've had the pleasure of seeing some of it at PyCon before. I've also seemed to have BB, my cat, joining us in the background, so hopefully he will behave. But before we get into showing off some of your projects, we've got some really cool ones to show off. I just wanted to ask you both, why did you start coding? What made you want to get started? Let's go to Sam first.
Well, actually, largely, it was to get out of homework. It's an interesting story. In primary school, the homework is basically unnecessary and a bit dumb. So to try and get me to do stuff outside of school that was actually learning, in an undiagnosed ADHD brain, my mom thought of getting me into coding. So she started me on Grok Learning to start learning Python early, around year 4, I think, just to give me something to do outside of school as a deal with the teachers, so I wouldn't have to do proper homework. And
well,
I just really enjoyed that, and I've not stopped since.
Amazing. Well, I'm glad it's really stuck with you and given you something while you got to your diagnosis, and is still something that sticks with you now. Izzy, what made you want to get involved with coding?
Probably it was seeing Sam doing so many cool projects. Because he's older than me, I got to see him start learning before I even did. So I saw him doing his cool coding and how everyone thought he was amazing for it. Even like his school friends, they were like, wow, you make these cool things. So I, as a child, quite idolized him. So I started coding through my mum and Grok as well.
Some big brother admiration there. So thank you, Sam, for getting another fabulous young lady into technology. We need as many as we can get. So that's just terrific. So I'm really excited to go to see some of the stuff you've been putting together since you started coding. We've got some really early creations from you in our deck. I'm just reminding everybody you can chuck comments into, ask questions in the comments. We'd love to answer them for you and see, maybe you want to know how you can get your kids involved with coding, or what were some of the hurdles. Start asking away. But let's throw to the slides. We can hear about Sam's journey in technology. Sarah, hello. Can we have some slides, please? Excellent. Might have just taken a second there. Okay, Sam, tell us all about this.
Okay, so this is one of my earlier projects in Pygame, which is a module of Python that allows for some basic game making. Basically, the idea was in year 10, one of the projects we had to do for IST, which is the tech course, we had to make a bunch of little small apps apps or games in Python to just... That was the entire assignment, make like 6 of these things. And one of the ones that this is actually my favorite one, was a little snake game. It has a couple of issues, because, just on the previous slide, sorry.
There we go.
Because it's early coding and I wasn't really thinking much, just trying to make a thing that moves and has apples. Like, I didn't think to not make the apple spawn on the snake, for example. And I think that I had something to say here, I forget. Anyway, yes, next things.
Next things. No, that's great. That's like obviously like something you figure out once you see the problem. You're like, probably should fix that, but that's really how coding goes. You go,
until just taking screenshots for this talk. I had no idea that was a thing that happened.
Wow, I love it. Well, there's always time to make improvements with all software, I think. So we're excited for version 2 of your snake game, I believe.
So this is one of my more recent ones. My school, Bradford Senior College, every year does projects for Vivid. So one of the thing that I worked on for this is a website to host descriptions about all the projects, and for when we had physical art shows, which we ended up having one due to COVID. There was going to be more than that because we couldn't do one with actually Vivid. Anyway, it also hosted like directions for where to find things inside the school. So I had to make a homepage that I thought would be interesting, and the way I did that was this homepage. Whenever you reload the page, it actually shows a different group of 6 different projects. So if you show the next page, when you reload, you might get a different set of projects, and each project has their own page, which is also on the next slide.
Cool. So everyone gets a chance.
This is just an example of one of the. yeah, this is one example of a page for the website that well, this was the way we worked for Vivid projects was we all split up into groups at the beginning of the year and tried to work on one continuous project for the entire year. And that, if anyone's done teamwork, doesn't always go too well. So we started off with 4 students, one of them being me, and ended up with 2 people, one of which wasn't in the original group. So teamwork can be quite difficult in these situations, but as you can see, we did end up getting a final product with a lot of difficulty. There were a lot of organizing issues that ended up with the collection of data from, like, I think it ended up being around 50 groups that we had to all get images and bios about and information on, and it's quite difficult to organize an entire year group to give information. So I think that was an interesting experience.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, no, working with kids, getting information, getting them organized is a stressful time, especially if you don't have necessarily the authority that a teacher might have to make people do things on time. But it looks amazing. And yeah, I hear that, yeah, the person who joined you got to help them out, get on board with tech a bit more. They were, you didn't necessarily have a techie team.
They weren't actually really a coder, the person I was working with. They were pretty new to tech and were just interested in learning. So I helped coach them through a little bit of it, and they helped me with like organizing people. So I'm not the best at keeping track of all the different things I have to figure out, but he helped me with that. Yeah,
that's amazing.
So
yeah, there's really just a lot of work.
Projects aren't actually in order. So the oldest one was first, and this is the newest one. So second newest one actually, I forget. But I'm just trying to show the kind of things you work through in school, because these were both for school. Yeah.
Awesome.
And
yeah,
so was the next
sounds
one.
Like we've got some good coding, development work, and project management coming together. There's so many different jobs you can do in technology.
Yes.
So let's take a
project management is hard, and that's a good lesson to learn early, I think.
Yeah, and there's really good careers in making all those cogs fit together in a machine to make it, it's kind of like a conductor of an orchestra, making everything play at the same time, so it sounds amazing, which it looked amazing.
Yes. So to compare that to, this is one of the first websites I ever made for, I think, again, IST, where this is one of my earlier experiences using HTML and CSS. I don't think there was any JavaScript at all on this website. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to show it because I'm not very good with screen captures, but there are animations involved in the other website, and all different types of interesting things that you can do. And this is just a static page with a couple buttons that we had to make a family tree. That was a website, and it was really simple. And I think this is a good contrast to the work I've worked up to.
Amazing. Yes.
And so the next slide is just this, I think, was year 9. So that's, give me a second. That's 4 years ago because I repeated a year. Yeah, so 13-ish, maybe later. That's a
14 or 15 would be year 9.
14 or 15, so, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. That's super amazing. And like we just saw what you've made last year at Bradfield, yes. And like this is an amazing place to start because it looks super cute. I love it. But yeah, then you can take it and do so much more with it, even from starting from.
But yeah, so this looked great to me at the time, but now looking back with having improved my skills and learnt more about like design and how things should look, this looks a bit dorky, to be honest. Anyway, yes, the next thing. This is just it's pretty clear that there wasn't a very solid color scheme or understanding of CSS, which I think I've actually quite improved on. Like, there's a very useful website, coolers.co, which it just makes color palettes for you. And sticking to a color palette actually just made my life so much easier in the other website. Whereas this, I was just trying to guess what things look good and didn't turn out the best it could have.
We've all been there. The colors,
okay.
you want
so
them all.
The last project I have screenshots of, which is the next one, is a thing I came up with in my spare time because I watched a YouTube video and I was like, oh, I can do that. So I watched a video explaining the maths of Bezier curves, where the way a curve is drawn is by taking the halves of lines. So each frame. Okay, I need to figure out how to explain this succinctly. Basically, you can draw curves by making other lines, and that can get very complex. And here's a simple example of that is this one.
Yes, it's very mathematical.
Yes, this is pretty math based. I actually really enjoy doing coding with maths. It's really fun for me. And this is a simple website I made with just HTML and JavaScript, barely any CSS, lots of buttons, and I think this is an SVG canvas that I learned about in this project. And I also made a version after this in Python, which can actually render each frame to make animations out of it, which was I thought was pretty interesting.
It's awesome. Yeah, I'm super into it. I love it. Let's jump on to our else slide. What else do you have to tell us?
Okay, so there are a couple other projects that I thought would be interesting to mention in passing, but not enough to have full slides on. The first project I ever did with electronics was actually using an Arduino that my mum brought home from a short conference on teaching and coding. She grabbed an Arduino and was like, hey, we should figure out something to do with this. And so this was early primary school for me. So this is the first language I ever properly learnt was C because of this. I had an Arduino, had a simple LDR, connected that to a servo, and put it in a Weet-Bix box that we'd turn inside out, with the servo connected to a paddle pop on the outside, so you could just shine a light at the LDR and see how bright it was. It's a pretty simple learning project, but I really enjoyed it, and it was one of the things that really got me into coding.
Awesome.
I think
that's
the most important thing to talk about anyway. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we have a question from Superfist here. Say, hey everyone, I wanted to ask what got you engaged with coding and tech? When I was a teen, I wanted to make games, but what made it interesting for you?
So for me, that was actually just grok learning, all of figuring out how to solve these interesting problems using coding in Python. Some of the harder questions, like moving up from beginners to advanced. When I started doing advanced, it was maybe year 7, just doing 1 or 2 questions, just trying to figure out the maths and the way that coding could help me solve maths problems. It's so fun for me solving problems with coding, because I feel like there's just a way that makes everything easier and just make it easier. Yeah.
It does feel like a superpower. That's why I really got into it once I learned. It's like, oh, I can just make the computer just do things for me so fast and get so many things done, which is amazing. And just teaching it how to do something. What about you, Izzy, before we go to your slides next?
I think the thing that got me engaged, similar to Sam, was problem solving. In the rest of my schooling life, I wasn't really challenged by school, but with coding, there was always something new to learn. There was always another problem that I could solve. So I found that very engaging, especially when doing something like Python or HTML, because there were just so many problems and so many ways you can solve them. So I found that quite interesting, and that's what got me really hooked onto it.
Amazing. Yeah, there's just so much you can do. It's just limitless in the ways you can apply technology to things, which is just great. So we're going to go to Izzy's projects next. So I'm very excited. There's some really cool e-textiles in here, which I love, coming up if we get the slides back up. And here we go. Okay, Izzy, take it away. Tell us all about this one. How old were you doing this one?
Okay, so for this one, I was actually 7 years old. And it was a project I did with a classmate and my mum, because we were told that we got to do a genius hour as part of our school because they wanted to encourage problem solving and learning new things on our own. And the reason I decided to make something so hard with my basic knowledge of sewing and everything else was that I heard another group were going to make a pencil case. And I realized that that would be really cool, but I wanted to be better than them. So I knew that my mum could like do cool things with computers. So I talked to her about it, and she told me that there was this really interesting thing called e-textiles, where we could use conductive thread and little boards to hold the not magnets, batteries, and we could get a pencil case to light up. So we spent ages of me going over to my friend's house and my mum coming and her sewing mostly because we were 7 and so couldn't do very much. And she taught us about circuits and how a way to easily visualize them when we're so young was like a race course where the electrons go around and around, and if you have an opening, they're just going to go out. So that's how she taught us to do the switches. Like you can see over to the right side at the top is actually a switch made by a press stud, because metal press studs, they conduct electricity. So if we had them open, it wouldn't light up. If we had them closed, it would. And I was really proud of this. So were my teachers, actually. I think I got posted on someone's Facebook. Everyone thought it was amazing. And my mum even uses it to teach sometimes because she thought it was a very cool starting point.
It's amazing. I love it. And I hope everyone just enjoyed Introduction to Electronics with Izzy. It was a great explanation. Thanks for that, Izzy. Okay, I love this website. It's beautiful. So please tell us about how old you were when you made this website and how you went about doing it.
Okay, so this was my first website, like the beginning of my HTML life, I guess. I was 9 years old, and this was 2015, so year 4. And this was part of a web competition in Grok Learning. And the problem was that I had to make a website similar to, I don't know if people know Rotten Tomatoes, but they wanted to do something like that, but called Sprouted Potatoes. And I really took that and tried to give it my all as a 9-year-old. So I did what I thought would be amazing, like design. I did bright colors and I made a logo, which I think took me ages, but was pretty cool if I do say so myself. And it taught me about hover. You can't tell here because it's just a picture, but all of the main buttons have on hovers because that was something I learned as part of the competition and I wanted to show it off. I did not win this competition, but I was very proud of it at the time.
It's beautiful. It's fantastic. I love the icon as well. It's a great logo. You get into graphic design, I hear as well. You spend a lot of time doing graphic design.
I do, yes.
Yeah, so this is a great starting point for using that. Okay, this one is fantastic. I've seen the talk at PyCon. Just tell us about this one.
Okay, so this one was just a home project that I made because I saw a video online by Stand Up Maths where he got a whole bunch of matchboxes for each different possibility on a noughts and crosses board, and he trained them to like not win but not really lose as much by reward system by giving beads, and it was a complicated video. I highly recommend it, but I figured that if it was easy enough to do with matchboxes and beads, then I could definitely do it with coding. I was wrong. it was very hard. There was a lot of maths. And because I didn't want to do every single different possibility, I made it so that you could flip it, but that also required some maths. And what I did is I made the game so that I could play against the computer, and then I made it so that the computer could play a random machine where it would try and play and obviously not get anywhere because it was random, but the machine would learn which things would help to win and which things wouldn't. And it taught me a whole bunch of modules in Python, because I used things like Pickle to take things out and put them in a spreadsheet, if I recall, to track the learning of my machine. And it did take me a long time, and it was really hard, but I think it definitely paid off because, as you said, I did get to go to PyCon in the learning stream to tell people about my awesome project.
Yeah, and it was a fabulous talk. If anybody wants to hear more about this project, jump on PyCon and look up the student showcase. What year was it in, Izzy?
It was in 2018, I think, but I was around 12, so that's year 7.
Oh, amazing. That's just so cool. Okay. This one, I love this as well. All the projects we see today, I love. So tell us about this escape room.
So this was actually part of the same competition that the first website was, except this one is the advanced stream, which is newer. But in the advanced stream, they've put in JavaScript. So this is basic on-click JavaScript with hidden divs and things like that to make it seem like it's got different states. Like this screen would feel different to the other one, but it was just a div. And it taught me a bunch about JavaScript and CSS, because it was really hard to make sure that you could click one div but not another div, because some things are behind other things and lots of buttons, and it did take me a long time, but it was very fun to learn all of these things, because this was basically what got me into doing JavaScript as a whole, like as part of HTML.
Awesome. It's fantastic. I love escape rooms. I play a lot of those escape rooms in a box. I know you do too. So this is classic Hogan quality right here. Let's go to your last project. Come on, slides. Saw this video.
Okay. So this is my latest project. I've done it all in chronological order, and this was actually last year. For an assessment, I had to make a game, and it had to use motion and gravity. But what happened was, when they told me I was going to make a game, I had an idea, because I play piano tiles quite a lot, which is very funny because I also play the piano. So I wanted to do something that I would actually play, and I'm not great with touch typing, so I figured that if I could change it so that I could type with any keys that I needed to practice, then I would practice more. I didn't practice more, but it did teach me a lot about JavaScript canvas, because in the middle bit where it's got the moving parts, that's actually a canvas, like a JavaScript canvas, and I had no idea that even existed before I started this project. I did, however, make it so that I could pass the assessment by putting in gravity, because otherwise I would get a really low mark. And after this one, there is actually an Easter egg where it has like a clicker game where you just have to jump over things using gravity. It wasn't very hard to play. Like, it's quite an easy game, but it was really hard to make. There was a lot of things that I had to do, and you can't see here on the video, but it does actually play music when you're playing the piano tiles bit. It plays for release, I think, and when you get a wrong note or you don't click it in time, it plays like a dissonant chord, so it seems like you've done something wrong. And I was quite proud of that, because I didn't know you could play songs either. I mean, you definitely can, but yeah, that was my limited understanding up until this point. I sadly did not get full marks on this, though. I got like 97%.
That's pretty okay, I reckon. I think that's probably, yes, we could say that's a good mark, I reckon. What do we think, in the comments? Is that a really awesome project? I reckon it is. Have you got any other projects you want to talk about?
Well, I did have another one that I was quite proud of, but it didn't fit in it didn't really fit the PowerPoint. So I made a website in year 9, where I had to be like a tech company. So I had to show items and have an about us section. And I was quite proud of that, mostly from a design sense, because I used the color scheme through coolers like Sam was talking about before. And so it was quite put together looking, and there was a bit of JavaScript in that. And for year 9, I was quite proud because I hadn't really done JavaScript very much past the on-click game. And so having JSON, like having a JSON sort as part of a website, I was amazed.
Yeah, that's super cool. Like, JavaScript can be tricky, and there's just a lot of things you can do with it. So good on you for getting out there and giving a bunch of different stuff a try. Those have all been amazing projects, and I hope everyone's got something to take away, that at any age you can get involved, and there's something for everyone at every level, and it's never too young to start. That leads me to a question from Arafat, one of our fantastic Microsoft MVPs in the AI MVP team. He asks Sam, but now we've seen both Sam and Izzy's slides. Let's ask them both. What would be the top 3 things you recommend folks of your age or younger to get started with coding? Let's go to Izzy.
Okay, so I know that most of the projects on this have been HTML and JavaScript, but that's just mostly because they're easier to show on a PowerPoint. But I quite like Python as a jumping off platform because that's what I learned in, and I find it very good for starting really basic. Like there's print statements, and they're really easy, and if statements, and they were easy for me when I was little, but they were great to learn how computers work, how you have to be specific, how to use a coding language, all of that basic foundation knowledge that you'll need to move to other coding projects or other languages. I found that really easy to learn in Python. So a couple of the things that I remember making in Python were I did a whole bunch of ciphers, like a Vignere cipher or a Caesar cipher. I did actually code some of them, and I had encode and decode, and that used maths, and maths is a good thing to use in Python because it's quite simple to use maths in Python. I also did things with ASCII so that it looked like it had visuals, but they were just lines and dashes and things like that to make it look like a project that you could show someone without having to think about all these like animation things. So
amazing,
yeah,
having some graphics makes it really exciting, I think, even if you don't want to get into the technical difficulties of CSS or something, and you can just make a text-based game in Python, which I think is a really fun way to interact with things.
I'm not sure I answered the question though. I'm so sorry. So I definitely suggest ciphers because it encourages maths and if statements and while loops. But I also did I'm totally blanking. I had an idea. Basic websites are also really good as a project for people my age if they're just starting coding. Scratch is always great. I mean, it's easier to get tutorials on Scratch as far as I've seen that get you to a full project. Also, Arduino is fun as a basic project to fiddle around with because you can do some quite cool things with the basic knowledge. And also Google is fun. Just look up projects on Google. That's what I do.
Awesome. Arafat says you did answer the question and that it was really good. Let's throw to Sam, see what he says about getting involved with coding. What are your top 3 things to do?
Okay, 3 things that I'd suggest for people my age getting into coding. First thing is convince your school to buy Grok Learning. It's probably not that hard to convince them. It's a really good program and it's really good for learning coding. It's one of the biggest reasons I'm such an avid coder like I am today because of the amount of interest and difficulty and fun challenges you find on Grok Learning. Another thing is, don't be afraid, to, as Izzy said, Google things. It doesn't make you a bad coder to look up some solution on Stack Overflow or learn some module that does everything you're trying to do for you. That is how all coders do that. There's one thing you need to remember: Google is your friend. And the last thing I'd say is, don't judge projects you try and do. Like, you might think to yourself, this is cheesy, or like, I know things like this, things better than this exist. I should be able to do better than this. Just do. If you think something looks fun, or if you think something sounds like something you can do, just do it, and you'll always figure out something and probably learn something along the way.
That's an amazing sentiment right there, and something I think professional developers can take on board as well. You don't always have to be building something you would make in production. You can build something just to learn it, even if it's really dodgy, but you learn something along the way. So that's a top tip there. My own 2 cents as an educator and tech person, I reckon getting involved with microbits, they're really good. Also, the Kookaberry, the hot new embedded tech on the block. Aussie made as well. Hard to get your hands on right now, but like come a year from now, that's going to be a hot new thing as well. So keep watching my stuff. I will be making some microbit and some Kookaberry projects within the next period of time, and they're really great for kids. And also, if you just like embedded tech or Internet of Things, or just you like fun, it's good for that. So thank you for showing your projects, kids. They were fantastic. Well, let's talk about coding in school. We've had a question from Keith that's on this topic, so we're going to go to our coding in school section. What have been some of the sources of knowledge and learning that you've had while learning to code? Did you get it from school? Has there been a lot of support at school? Did you get it from Google, as you said, online courses, or your mum? What's the top goes, and what is coding in school like? Let's go to Izzy first.
Okay, so me, like, for myself, I didn't really learn coding through school. I did use online courses, and my mother, because she is an amazing coding teacher, and having her live in my home and not using her knowledge would be silly. So I learned a lot from her, and I learned a lot from things like Grok Learning, like Sam said, and web competitions and things like that, because learning from the internet's quite easy, because there's often you can go back to it even if you do struggle. Or I went to GPN a lot as a kid, so they had many projects for me to try, even if I had done the project already, because they do tend to cycle in my many years. I've done things multiple times, but I always learn something new, and I always meet new people, and that's great. But on the education side, I don't think I learned very much at school, especially because I had learned a lot more in primary school, and they don't teach coding at a high level in primary school. I learned like a little bit, but they don't teach very much in primary school. Yeah, they're trying to integrate it now, but it's the basic stuff. So even with my knowledge, I probably would still be higher than that level. And I was meant to do a coding unit in like year 7 and 8, but my school did mess up a little bit, and I ended up doing wood tech twice instead. So I didn't learn coding through that either. But by the time I got into high school, I was already doing things like the machine learning thing, so I didn't really need to learn through school. But just from what I've heard from other kids who hadn't learned coding in primary school as a child, they didn't get very much education in coding either, because the coding unit in year 7 and 8 was mostly Scratch or block coding. And then in year 9 and 10, when I did IST, which is meant to have coding projects, there were coding projects, but because my teachers weren't solid on coding, I only really got coding projects in year 9, and most of them were I could do whatever I wanted and everyone else would do the basic things. I remember distinctly that the website I made while also having to tutor a couple people through making their own websites, because my teacher, we were like learning online, And so she'd given us a whole bunch of tags, and that was how we got taught to make a website. She gave us tags at the end of an assessment task and said, go use Google. So because my classmates weren't very good at go use Google, they took to me. And so I taught them the basics. And it was quite hard because they didn't listen very much because they were all boys and they thought they were better than me. But, that was pretty fun. And then year 10, we didn't do very much coding because my teacher had like no coding.
I think we've lost your audio. So while you get that fixed up, let's go to Sam. And what have your experiences been like at school?
Okay, so for coding experiences at school, when I was in primary school, there wasn't any no initiative yet to learn coding in primary school, so that doesn't exist. I believe they're starting to do that now, but I wouldn't have anything to talk about. As for high school, as Izzy said, having grown up on Grok Learning, I was pretty passable at Python and knew some basic HTML and CSS from Grok Learning going into high school, and didn't get very much learning until IST, which makes sense because it's the class where you're meant to be learning coding. And even then, the main coding I learned was we had to do a project in VB, Visual Basic, which was interesting, and learning a little bit more for that family tree website I showed. I'm just going to plug my headphones in quickly. So, when it comes from other sources, yes, Grok Learning was amazing. I'm just gonna.
Cool. Well, while we have technology, everybody, right? Isn't it? It's an interesting world that we live in. But some context on the curriculum, as we've been talking about it a bit, we do have a national curriculum now that does include coding. So we will be seeing more of a focus on coding from year 3 to year 10. There's the national curriculum, and it's mandatory from year 3 to year 8. But it is hard to roll it out in schools because we don't have as many teachers that have that confidence in coding yet. So if you're a teacher out there who's not super confident in coding, please do follow me on Twitter and shout out to me. How can we help teachers get confident in coding? Because I'm looking at writing some sort of teachers once a month teacher tech chat or something. So let us know what you'd like to have topics on, what I can stream out to help people get that confidence so we can help our kids in school learn to code. How's your audio, Sam? No, we're still losing Sam. But as Jax said, teaching is a great way. Oh, do we have you back, Sam?
Yes. Sorry.
Terrific.
Quickly. So yes. As for outside sources, Grok Learning was a godsend. It was amazing. It really helped me learn Python and a little bit and a lot of HTML and CSS. And as it comes, I've actually had good and bad experiences with software design. At my old school, where he's currently going, Concord, the teacher I had for software design didn't know any code, so I wasn't really able to teach us much, only assign tutorials. But where I am now, I've moved to Bradfield Senior College to repeat year 11, and I'm now going into year 12. I'm having great experiences with my current teacher, Philip. He knows a good amount of code, and he's very good at helping you learn your own code if you're going above where he is. I think that's an extremely useful skill, teaching people to use Google. Because as Izzy was saying, her teacher said, just go use Google, and a large amount of the kids in her class had issues with that because we aren't taught how to find code online. And that's just a really useful skill that I've been taught by my mother, how to find good code that'll help you if you're stuck. So yes, my mother has been amazing, Grok Learning has been amazing, and my current software design teacher has been amazing.
Fantastic. I'm so excited to hear that you're having a great experience now, because there are some amazing tech teachers out there. And when you get one of the people who's confident in teaching those things, it's just fantastic. So let's help our teachers all get to that level so we can have awesome tech kids of the future. Shout out to Jack's comment. Teaching is a great way to cement your own knowledge, even if students don't listen well. Sadly, as a woman in tech, I hear you, Izzy, with that comment. But that is, why the Girls Programming Network was created, so we both could teach girls. Women could get involved by teaching girls, to get girls involved, but also to boost their own confidence. So whatever you're learning, it's always somebody who doesn't know it yet. So do get out there and share that knowledge to lift yourself up and spread the joy of coding as well. But getting that skill of Googling things, that's something you got to teach as well. So if you don't know something and somebody asks you how to do something, showing someone how you would look it up and Google it is also a great tip on how to share that joy of coding and give people a leg up. So, still waiting for Izzy to rejoin us. Fingers crossed.
Her mic's broken. She's finding something to fix that.
Okay.
I can quickly talk about teaching.
Yes.
As is pretty obvious, I'm not an official teacher. But when it comes to software design, again, we're learning HTML, CSS, and a bit of JavaScript for our classes, and we're doing proper projects, website projects, which has been quite nice. But another way where I think Philip is skilled in software design teaching is actually assigning teaching. So if you've learned something, he's good at helping pair you with people who aren't quite sure about that subject. So both that you can help them learn and strengthen your own knowledge of the concept. I think that's a really useful technique in teaching, and having taught other people subjects is actually really helpful to learn. Yeah, as that commenter said.
Amazing. Fantastic. Okay. Well, I've got a question about what is the attitudes towards coding in school? So you're a diehard coder. Are your friends into coding? Are there certain people who are into coding and certain people who aren't? How do people look at you as a coder, Sam?
Okay, so that's a bunch of different topics that I'll have to address separately, I think. As it goes to how do my friends view coding, I have a few friends who've experimented with coding outside of school. That's not a very common thing from what I've seen. But when it comes to my friends in my software design class, all of them, no matter what their level of coding, actually are just quite enjoying it, especially under Philip, because he's good at getting you interested in coding. I think that's an important skill. And so, basically everyone in my class is genuinely interested in learning coding and improving their coding skills, which I think is great. Sorry, what was the second half of that question? How do you view me as a coder?
Yeah. Is it cool? Is it cool to code? We know it's cool to code, but does everybody else know it?
Talking from the perspective of the Vivid project that we had to do, where I was the main and basically only coder on the website for a large amount of time. Yes, people thought it was cool. An attitude I saw often was like, that's a skill I'll never be able to learn, and therefore it's interesting and cool, which I think is false. Anyone can learn coding, of course, and it's very attainable. The attitude mostly was it seems unattainable and therefore is pretty cool. And while it's nice being seen as cool, I don't like that attitude.
I agree. It does seem a bit magical if you don't know how to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And don't know where to start.
You don't know much about it. That it just feels like they kind of feel like you're just above them in a level, and that's not just simply not true. I just have practice, I guess.
That's it. And that's the same with any skill. If someone's like, I'm going to woodwork a table, I'd be like, cool. That, I guess you get wood and you cut it up, but I don't really know how to make it look like the ones you buy at the shops. I could nail 4 bits of wood to a tabletop, but no one would pay me money for it. So how do you even do that? So that's the same with any skill. And I think
exactly,
breaking down that barrier of that magicalness is really important. So I'm glad you're getting on here and telling kids about the projects you've made and showing them that it's not all magic. There's just a few skills you can learn there.
I didn't just become how I am with the Vivid website. It's a lot of steps to get there. Yeah.
That's exactly it. So moving on to my next kind of area is about planning for the future. So are there any things that you think that schools and community, the government or anybody, industry could be doing to get more kids involved with coding, whether it's breaking down that magical barrier or making it easier to access, or what stops kids getting involved with coding and what can we do about it?
I think, and I think we need better advertising for coding in schools. Like it's either seen as a bludge subject or a nerd subject in high schools, and that's well, it's first of all, it's inaccurate. It's not a bludge subject. There's a lot of effort you have to put in to do well in software design and IST. But it's a really, I think it's a versatile subject that anyone can use in basically any field. Like, and when it comes to software design, there is no prerequisite coding. People always feel like it's like you need to know stuff before you head in, and there's no prerequisite coding. We had people in Bradfield who didn't know anything about JavaScript before we started this project, and are doing well today in our full-on basically websites and apps that are useful as a project, as an actual product.
Yeah, that sounds like a great take. It's a marketing problem. Should leave it up to the marketing team.
I think it's largely a marketing problem in the government side.
Yeah, so we need to break that down, and because it's really useful in so many different domains. Like you don't just have to do like tech for tech's sake. It's about solving people's problems. And I like, you know, whether you want to do medical research and make something that runs, a cool, imaging machine, or save the oceans with, cameras that, orientate themselves and, traverse the ocean floor. You can do it all with coding.
And another thing, we need to update the software design and ISD syllabuses. Tech is one of the fastest moving industries ever, and we're using syllabuses made in the 90s. It's not useful.
Yeah, that's true. We weren't even, using Python 3 then, and we love Python 3. So, yeah, and so many other languages, tools, and all the stuff I'll be streaming about. The cloud, we didn't have all that, capability then, and you can just do so much stuff with it. It's all about what you were saying is, we go on the internet, we Google things, and we take things from other people's code, and that's completely normal because that's how the whole tech industry is made. And that's kind of how the whole world is made. When you're trying to, make a building, you don't invent the screw and the hammer from scratch every single time. You take what's been built and you build on it. So if we can get that understanding of the
modules.
Modules, that's it. If we get the understanding of what's already out there, you can just have the stepping stones to take that and make the next awesome thing and solve more problems rather than sticking to the basics all the time. We can go out and solve human problems, which I think is really great, and something that gets kids, especially girls who are really underrepresented, I think really get into these ideas about saving the world with code.
Oh yeah, and that's another thing. In one of the most alternative, I'd say, schools, artsy schools in New South Wales, we have a single girl in the coding class. Yeah. It just sucks. A comment from Arafat: Sam has one more hidden school. He reads our minds. No, I'm just the son of a teacher. I have absorbed a lot of opinions and facts about this.
Yeah, that's it. But they are good facts and good to get out there because, if you're not doing tech at school right now, you might not know what it's like, and that we really need to be updating these syllabuses and, giving kids opportunities to make the cutting edge thing or solve the next problem. And that kind of leads me to my next question around why do you think it's important for us to enable more different kinds of people to get involved with coding and technology?
I blanked on the first half of that question. Sorry, what was that?
Why is it important that we get more different kinds of people involved with technology and coding? What's diversity bring to us in the tech industry?
Well, diversity is really important when you're making these kind of applications and services that'll serve large areas and large groups of people. Like you see a couple years ago, AIs for reading faces that were not detecting people of color. Diversity, well, rather, a lack of diversity in the coding room or the boardroom is where these kind of issues come from. There's an inherent bias from the coder, and putting into any product, and having a diversity, having a diverse group making those coding those apps and stuff like that, kind of averages out the biases, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's all about representation and hearing those opinions. And also I find you can not only get better different solutions, but you can get better different problems to solve that one section of society won't even realize need to be solved.
Exactly, because every different group and every different any person of any different situation will have different perspectives, different issues that they face, and so only having one major group of like 20-year-old white guys in the planning room is not going to see many, not going to see the kind of problems that a large people are going to face.
Exactly. We don't need another app for getting food delivered to our house. We've got enough of those. We need some new problems to solve. I'm going to ask you one more question from the audience before I head on to our last question, unless anybody else pops something in there. This is from Roth Pisal. Sorry if I haven't said that right. I've got a question. What makes you study Python at first rather than other languages? Maybe I'll throw to Izzy if you can hear us now.
Okay. So the reason that I personally started with Python, I think, is that my mother, my teacher, was very proficient in it. That was one of her main coding languages. But also, I think that it's quite great for having different levels of capability all fit under Python. Like there's functions, there's if statements, there's while loops, and there's prints, and they're all different levels of difficulty, and they're all under the one thing. And then you can always add different modules like Pygame or Kiwi and still extend people under the one language, or Logobits also use a version of Python. So it's quite versatile in that sense.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's super versatile. It's super readable. It's something that's really useful. And I've used Python from everything from web dev to machine learning. My main language that I use is Python, and I've used that in the industry for the last 7 years. So it's super useful no matter what you're doing. Sam, anything to add to why Python is great?
So that's a great point. Having learned a large amount of Python, a pretty large amount of, well, a passable amount of JavaScript, and a little bit of C, a little bit of C++. I think, as you were saying, Python is one of the easiest to read. Having it, the closer a language is to read, the closer it is to English, makes it a lot easier to learn. I think. I think it's a lot easier to get started with. So there's a really low barrier for entry and a high ceiling, I guess. Having learned things like regex, Flask, backend for websites, and all different kinds of problem solving, and as you were saying, just anything. You can do anything with Python. I think it's a great language just for general purpose. It might not be the best for any specific any specific use. So sometimes you'll find things that like need a faster language. C is by definition faster, but it's also just harder to learn. And I think Python can solve any problem to an extent. So I think it's good to learn at an early stage.
Absolutely. Thanks for those answers, both of you. Just a reminder to fill in your surveys if you haven't, so we can have more talks from amazing people like Sam and Izzy if that's what you want. Do jump on the link that Sarah posted up earlier for us on my personal website. We've got for the landing page for today's event. It's on my Twitter as well if you need it. And it's got some things whether you want to get your primary kids into Blockly based, make codes, got some awesome stuff. Minecraft, if your kids are Minecraft fanatic, there's some coding based around Minecraft. There's some stuff on Microsoft Learn, which might be great for your older coders getting started with some, interesting space themed and machine learning that you can do, a whole pathway you can follow. And there's also, from my side hustle, there's a free cheat sheet for Python on there if you want to grab it. It's just super useful. I just want everyone to have it. So before we run off, just in 2 sentences, where do you see tech taking you in the future? How does it fit in with your passion? What might you do next? Let's go to Sam.
Okay, so basically the path I'm on, I want to get into cybersecurity at Macquarie Uni, like that cybersecurity course, because cybersecurity is one of the fields of tech that most appeals to me. It seems like a constant problem-solving challenge. It seems like somewhere I can always be learning and always be improving my coding. And also that could lead into another kind of, I guess, dream job for me, which would be penetration testing of large companies.
Awesome. So yeah, professional hacker hacking your own company. I have some friends doing that. It sounds like a very cool job. Izzy, what does your future look like? How does tech impact it? What else might be involved?
Okay, so I quite like web development. So I really want to go to a website that does web development. Not a company that does web development. I'm not sure where on the scale I fit because I quite like front end, but I also quite like back end. So at the moment, I'm trying to go for somewhere big so I have job stability. But a small company would also be great because that would mean that I would get to do both.
That's true. Yep. In a startup, you've got to do a bit of everything. So I see a future full stack developer right here with Izzy Hogan. They're both amazing. Please give it up in the comments for Sam and Izzy for joining us today. And they're amazing projects that they've shown us. And they're really relevant opinions about what tech is like right now for kids. Thank you all for joining us. I hope to see you again in the future. Please do get in contact on Twitter if you love these guys. Yes. Thank you both.
Thanks, Renee. Thanks, Izzy. Thanks, Sam. Renee has covered everything in terms of post-event stuff. We've just put up the survey, a link to our future events at the Reactor Sydney, and also the link to the YouTube channel, which we'll share with you there, and the additional resources that Renee mentioned. So you'll be able to find that all there in the comment section. Thank you to everybody who tuned in and commented today and asked those questions. They were really great. It was awesome to hear from Izzy and Sam and their high school experience with coding. And Renee, thank you so much for facilitating it. Thank you to everyone again. Have a good rest of your afternoon, evening, or morning, and we'll see you next time for another Microsoft Reactor live stream event.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, tech teens of the future. Our future is safe in your tech hands.
Bye, everyone.